Welcome to the Crush It in Sales podcast. I'm your host, Melinda Van Fleet. This podcast focuses on the intersection of sales, leadership, and personal development. So let's get ready to crush it. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Crush It in Sales podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today, and Happy New Year. Today, yay! I am so excited to introduce Sarah K. Ramsey. Sarah is a fellow podcaster, and we had so much fun chatting on her podcast, Toxic Person Proof podcast, that I thought it would be awesome to have her on this podcast as well, because as you've been listening, I talk a lot about toxicity in the workplace. So I thought it'd be fun to have Sarah on because she is a toxic relationship specialist, a life coach, and an NLP master practitioner. Whoop, lots of letters for me today.
It is, and there's an MS after my name too, not for Mrs. for my master's degree, right?
I love it. That's awesome.
I worked hard for all those letters. Yeah,
it is. I got a little tongue-tied there, everybody, but that's a podcast, and we'll let it roll. So
awesome. Yeah.
So welcome.
Thank you. Well, I think this is such an important conversation, even within the sales process, because people who are in sales know if your mindset is tanked, your bank account is tanked.
Yeah.
Right? And one of the things I don't really talk about that much in the Wondrous Woman program, because it seems almost too good to be true, but here I can kind of explain it so it won't seem too good to be true. If there's a toxic person in your life, it affects your mindset. The most simple, of course, oh my gosh, right? Mm-hmm. And if you are constantly trying to solve toxic people problems, which most of them don't even really have solutions, right? You can work around the problem, but we try to I'm just going to have better boundaries. I'm going to fight them. I'm going to whatever, which hardly ever works, right? But if you continue to kind of throw your head up against the wall over and over and over again, you're not making your best money and you're exhausted. And nobody does better in sales when they're exhausted.
Yeah, it's so true. You become consumed. It consumes you.
It consumes you. And so kind of within the Wondrous Woman program that I put on, kind of one of the secret hidden facts is that how many more women make more money after starting. I mean, almost instantly. And they call me the success fairy, which is cute and funny, but really it's no, your mind was a mess because you were constantly trying to solve problems that didn't have solutions. So we helped you solve problems that do have solutions, and you have more energy and money. It's not hard. I am not the success fairy, right? I mean, I streamline it in a way that helps women become successful, but it's very much common sense.
Yeah. But people get stuck.
Yeah.
They truly get stuck. So how did you end up being, I'm going to use your words, the success fairy? How did this become part of your world?
Success fairy, narcissist ninja, whatever all the names I've been called. I've been called some names I won't repeat on your podcast too, but those are not usually from my women. It's so I obviously did not grow up thinking as a little girl, this is what I was going to do, right? Mm-hmm. And I was really someone, it's going to sound kind of weird to talk about, but I was someone with a lot of potential, right? I was going to go to college, get my master's or get my undergrad in piano performance because I went to a private school, so that paid for private school, right? And it was just a lovely degree. Planning on after that to get my MBA, had all this tick, 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 tick planned. And instead of fulfilling my potential, what I did is make myself small so everyone else in my life looked good.
Oh, yes.
Right? I downplayed myself. I downplayed my strengths. I downplayed my talents. And I became in a support role for people in my life. Mm-hmm. I was no longer the main event of my life. I was in a support role, right? How can I help you? How can I help you? How can I help you? But not helping people solve problems, which I do now, because I still help people, right? It's amazing.
Right.
But not helping people, right. Yeah. Not helping people become better problem solvers. What I was doing is helping other people become more selfish.
Mm, yeah. I think that happens so often though. Don't you think that's like a huge, huge learning for so many people is to figure out how to handle that?
And how to balance it.
Mm,
Because every day I wake up and someone says, "Thank you, you changed my life." Sometimes it's women I've worked with, sometimes it's women who've just come through the podcast or my free content or my Facebook group, Finding Love and Success. And success, success,
yeah,
success. Let me say it again,
that word.
success after a toxic relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And we have this idea that toxic relationships only happen to certain types of people, right? That maybe lower socioeconomic or whatever you have in your head, certain groups of people, right? Oh, toxic relationships could never happen to someone like me.
Yeah.
They only happen to someone like you.
Yeah. Or how do you feel about when someone has a toxic relationship and a coach tries to tell them it's their problem to solve, like it's their issue?
Ooh, yay. Okay. So,
I'm going there because I've heard a podcast before and I had to shut it off. I was like, oh no, you don't.
give me their number and I'll call them. No, I mean, I'm serious because you would think toxic people make me mad, and they do. What really makes me mad is people who call themselves healers, experts, whatever, and they're giving such horrific advice.
I know. It's so true. I'm with you.
Okay. So let's talk about the word boundaries.
One of my favorite words. All of my audience knows that.
Okay. So I may flip a switch for you. So let's see. Okay. So boundaries, like I have boundaries in my life. I have boundaries around my time. I have boundaries around my energy. I have boundaries around my finances. Okay. I have boundaries in my life. Okay. But sometimes when we use the word boundaries, we are talking about what you said with that coach, and they kind of say it's your fault. And they say, well, the reason they did that is because you didn't have strong enough boundaries.
Mm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about the story of the three little pigs. Little pig had straw boundaries. The big bad wolf huffed and he puffed and he blew his house down. Next little pig had stick boundaries. The wolf huffed and he puffed and he blew his house down. The third little pig had brick boundaries. And still the big bad wolf huffed and he puffed and he blew the house down. Better boundaries did not make a better wolf.
Mm. Yeah, he still got in.
Well, and I don't know if he got in, but the pig was able to protect himself. But the boundaries did not change the wolf. Like the wolf didn't go, "Whoa, you've obviously been working on your boundaries. That's awesome. I'm going to change my personality now and accept blame for all the bad behavior that I've been doing, and we're going to like skip into oblivion and live happily ever after."
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. You're
So
totally right. Yeah.
boundaries are about protecting ourselves, not creating better wolves.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it gets into blame, right? Well, you should have better boundaries. Okay, you should have a new strategy in dealing with a toxic person, for sure. But when we call it boundaries, it makes it a weakness in us. And we do need boundaries. We do need to improve our boundaries. Please hear me. I am absolutely not saying you should not improve your boundaries. I'm saying be clear on what those better boundaries are going to get you.
Mm. Yeah.
And they can protect you. And some wolves may improve. Many wolves will not improve. They will find someone else to blame, someone else to kick, someone else to bully, someone else to get you to do their work, someone else to whatever.
Right. Right. But often too, like those healers, to use that,
Mhm.
that's the word you used, they like to make it that you have to do this internal work, that the toxic person really isn't toxic, it's you. So that's like a whole other thing too.
Yeah, those people don't know what they're talking about.
I know.
So within the premise of my book,
Mm-hmm.
um, there are two truths. One, there are toxic people. Two, you know them.
Mm-hmm.
They are in your circles. There is, in the nicest, most forgiving statistics, 1 out of 10 people have some type of personality disorder that will not change.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah.
1 out of 10. Many experts are saying it's as much as 2 out of, or 1 out of 5.
Mm-hmm.
Not 2 out of 10 or 2 out of 10, 1 out of 5.
Mm-hmm.
Every expert is also agreeing that this is on the rise, that there will be more toxic people in the future.
Mm-hmm. Why is that? Have you heard any rationale? Because my husband and I do talk about this. This is a topic that we talk about in regard to our business, because we're noticing it, to be real honest, for sure.
My journey has just begun, I assure you. Let's chat again in 20 years and let's see what my journey looks like on this. Because, okay, there is toxicity. We talk about toxicity as if it's only a trauma issue rather than a selfishness issue.
See, I do see it though as a selfishness. Yes.
Most people don't. You do.
Right. But Ryan and I we acknowledge that our thinking's a little off the mainstream, I guess you could say. So, but go on. I'm curious.
Yeah, because it's like, oh, well, they had trauma. We need to feel sorry for them. They just need more love. They need more help. They need more this. And it becomes all about them. And your life is all about them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what we miss is like, whoa, they're just getting their way all the time. They're being selfish and getting away with it all the time. This is a very good deal for them. This is a very bad deal for me.
Right.
That's the piece we miss. And toxic people don't play by the same set of rules.
Mm-mm.
Okay. Now, and I will say this, why people are toxic or why personality disorders such as narcissistic personality, there's so much conversation around that and no solid answer that like everyone agrees on. So I want to start by saying that, right? Yeah. It's not, brain scans are very new development in our world. 100 years ago, you couldn't scan people's brains.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So and there's genetic studies now that would not have taken place 100 years ago.
Mm.
Okay. So we are very early on in this conversation, how much is nature, how much is nurture.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very politically correct, positive psychology to say, well, it's all nurture. Hurt people. If they hadn't had such a hard childhood, then they would be fine and they just need more love and I just need to be forgiving. Okay. Right. And that's what we want to be true. Mm-hmm. Because then all we need is love, or whatever it is. That's a very, very positive approach.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Right. It is not a very statistical approach or scientific based approach.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So there is definitely not this is the consensus. It's 48.3% nature and 46 that does not exist at this time. Gotcha. Toxic people are always also very resistant to help. So it's not as if these toxic people, you can get them all in a room and say, well, what happened to you? What patterns can we figure out?
Right. And that crossed my mind when you said about the brain scan. I get what you were saying, because something I had to start saying to Ryan years ago was, these bad clients don't wake up in the morning and say, I'm a bad client, right? They just don't.
They say you're a bad business.
Right. There's something else wrong.
Yeah. So they call it blame shifting, right? So they shift the blame on you. Okay. Yeah. So you can imagine those people would be very hard for mental health professionals to figure out what really happened or figure out what's going on.
Right. Because how do you even get that test study going?
Yeah. Well, no, they're the toxic one. No, they're the toxic one. No, they're the toxic one, right? So it's quite the conundrum for sure. What is not a conundrum is how unlikely they are to change.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That is a very consistently agreed upon thing.
Yeah. Okay?
Now, My personal thoughts on why it's increasing. There is also increased drug use in utero, increased, there's some kind of other theories on this. One of the things when we are concept, there's like truly toxic, like personality disorder, something is probably going on with their brain. And then we are just raising selfish children. We are raising selfish children. And there's such pressure on mothers to not have a life outside of their kids.
Wow.
If I'm with my friends and I say, I really took some time for me, and I went to, I left my kids with a sitter, and I went hiking, and I spent time in nature, and I worked out, and I got a new outfit. Really? That's what you did this weekend? If I said, I am just so exhausted. I ran my kids here, and then I ran my kids here, and I ran my kids there, and I had a slumber party, they'd be like, you go, girl. Good mama. Okay? Yeah. But here's what I want to say. I have a daughter, and my daughter does not have an expiration date. Right? I am perplexed that we think, oh, my daughter's, I'm just talking about women here. I have a son too, and he's fabulous, and I feel the exact same way about him. But it's like, okay, so my daughter has an expiration date. Right now, her goals are important. Her dreams are important. Her making sure she gets rest is important. Making sure her social skills are, she's in good schools. She's getting in the best clubs. This is important. But at some point, she has an expiration date. And either when she gets married or when she has children, she expires. And those things are no longer important. She becomes a non-person. And then her children become people. Do we think this is working?
Yeah, that's really amazing. I never thought of it that way, but that's so true. Yeah.
And our children become, I want my daughter to want to become a woman like me. I don't want to use my daughter as an excuse not to be a human. And I see so many women like, it's like, oh, I'm a part of the pageant world. Ooh, I'm going to say this very, very lightly and like sweetly. You see a lot of moms is like, oh, my daughter's so beautiful. I'm going to make sure she's in a pageant. I'm going to make sure she's taken care of. And then, it's like, well, mama, are you taking care of you? How much money are you spending on your daughter's new dress? And then you maybe haven't taken care of you in a while.
Oh my gosh. You're bringing back a flashback memory of when I went to my niece's dance, big dance competition in June of 2019. All the little girls, you know how expensive all that is, right?
Oh, it's so expensive. Yeah.
All the moms, except for my sister, look like shit. I'm going to be real honest. Like really bad. And eating chicken nuggets and like it showed, just, yeah, you're right.
And you're teaching in that setting, when we really think about leading our daughters by example. We are saying, I don't want my daughter to think she has an expiration date, that at some point her life isn't important anymore. It's so far from me being selfish or me being, because what's selfish is to, I had an author, I can't remember who it was. I usually can't remember, but he said his mother had a life unlived. And so she made her children her life because that was socially acceptable, but their children resented her for it. But you see over and over. And then they're not even calling it helicopter parents anymore. They're calling it like lawnmower parents.
Wow.
And then we're thinking somehow these children who have had their way and had parents who were servants and society, oh, you don't have a life, you're exhausted, you're tired, you don't exercise, you don't take care of yourself in any way, but you always show up at your kids' ball games. And then we're thinking, man, I'm really giving my children the skills to have healthy relationships as adults. But at what point do they learn that life is not all about them?
Right. Do you think it's the generation though? Like if we grew up, because you and I believe are the same age and had a similar conversation last time we chatted in the same vein of like this age group of women in their 40s, let's say, not taking, not practicing self-care, and I don't have kids, but I can see it. So, and I can feel it even in my coaching business. They don't want to spend the money on themselves because, they feel guilty because of, so-and-so's dance lessons or soccer.
Yeah.
So do you think it's because our parents were, my dad worked all the time and that's how I grew up. So there's some feeling of like guilt or shame and then they just pass it on.
I think that it's just a different society. And when we think about, no one thinks, well, I probably should die in childbirth because lots of women before me have died in childbirth. So I'm going to not take care of myself medically.
Mm-hmm.
Right. As a society, we have evolved in a good way. It's called standard of living. Our standard of living has gotten better. Okay. My grandparents' generation, they were probably like thinking, well, what are you talking about? I'm going to pay for your dance lessons. I'm like paying the mortgage. What are you talking about?
Right.
Right.
Right. They would
This
never.
is a very new thing that we have that disposable income to choose, because your daughter's dance lessons are not a requirement.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That is a disposable income. It may not feel like it because it's like such an expectation that we pour that money into our kids. My kids are in activities. I pay for my kids' activities. I go to my kids' activities. I don't want it to seem like I'm like, oh, I don't care about them. I do. I care about them so much that I want them to have healthy relationships in the future. I want them to know the world doesn't revolve around them. I want them to see a mother that they want to, like, that leads by example, not a mother who hides behind them.
Right, right, right. Because they should be proud of the life that you lead for yourself as the example. And that's the crux of it all. And
it's being brave.
Not doing that. Yeah.
It's being brave. It's me saying, oh, honey, you should be brave and try new things. But I've already reached my expiration date. I don't do that anymore.
Right.
Then we wonder why we don't have healthy relationships with our parents and like kids, and then kids resent us and all. I mean, I have never heard of anyone going to therapy and saying, gosh, I'm just really here. My mother, she was giving and she made a difference in the world, and she really was emotionally stable, and she didn't hide behind other people. She was brave and faced her internal crap and made sure to know I was always a priority, but also her life was a priority, and and found that balance. I'm just really here because that was just so disturbing for me. Like, oh, girl, do that.
Yeah. 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 But people don't see it. They just don't see it. It's really, it's amazing. Mm-hmm. It's like, how do you get people to see that? How do you stop this culture of mom shaming? And I'm not even a mom, and I know it exists because of my friends and my sister and stories I hear, and obviously what you're sharing, I get it.
It's easier to invest in your kids than yourself.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
It's easier.
Yeah.
It's easier to eat Nutella out of a jar than chop carrots.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier to watch Netflix than work out.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I'm not, if anyone's listening, it's like, oh my gosh, like, I am a very involved mother. My kids are in activities. Please, I am not saying leave your kid with a sitter all the time and be at the spa and you do you and who cares about them. That is such a far cry from what I'm saying. I am saying, what a gift to give your children that you're a person too.
Yeah.
What a gift to give your children that the world does not revolve around them. What a gift to give your children's future spouses that is not always their turn.
Yeah. And I get that, Sarah, for sure. And I think anyone with half a brain gets it. And hopefully some people that it's a wake-up call. So yeah. You're an amazing mother. Anyone can check out your social media.
Oh yeah, and that's definitely on my to-do list, right? I mean, it's something I check in with because I'm a business owner.
Gorgeous. Oh my goodness.
Oh, thank you. It's like I have a little. That was kind of one of my goals. I do focus goals within my Wonder Woman group, and there are 3 focus goals. And my focus goal last week, it was like Christmas week, but I was like, I have been busy. My podcast has been blowing up. My program has been blowing up. Everything's been going so well. I really need to focus in on my kids. Next Monday, I have a flexible schedule. There was somebody who signed up, and I was like, my kids are out of school. I'm not going to work that day. Like, I am not talking about ignoring your children. I'm talking about finding balance in your life.
Right.
In a way that allows you. Glennon Doyle talks about this too. And she just talks about, trying to live our life through our children. And it's just such I definitely, no one thinks I'm teaching my kids to be more selfish. Okay. It's just easier to like let them be brave instead of you being brave sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't feel, there's no guilt in like, oh, I'm sending my kid to space camp. And in my greatest compliment, and I hear it over and over and over again, people say, what do you do? I give children back their mothers.
Oh, wow.
That is what I do. I give children back their mothers. They need you emotionally stable. They need your head in the game. They need you not solving problems that are like beating your head against the wall. They need you crushing it in sales. They need you crushing it in your career because that's safety for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
My kids feel safer when I'm not worried about money.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That just is, right? So as we think about like this balanced life, that just let that become a part of it. And what a gift to their future. What a gift to their future employers.
Mm-hmm.
To not say, here's little Johnny, everything's been revolved around him. I hope his boss wants the company to revolve around him. I hope his spouse is comfortable. I hope his wife knows what a good, or like flip. I have a son and a daughter and love them dearly both, right? And this flip, it's like, man, I hope my future son-in-law knows exactly how wonderful my daughter is and his whole life revolves around her. I hope I can like pray enough for the universe to attract that or whatever else. Like, it's like, whoa. Or does my daughter have an expiration date? I'm not comfortable with either of those. Right. I want her to learn balance, and I want her to learn that sometimes it is about her and sometimes it is not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. You're setting her up for the future.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. One thing from my past, I had a very religious upbringing, and one thing I think that community did well is they worked, my specific community worked to raise adults, not to raise children.
So that was actually, I'm going to put this into context, like that was actually something you knew as a child, like it was put in such a way that you truly understood that, or like you learned that later?
I was supposed to be a good functioning member of society who was not a selfish jerk. That was an expectation. Yeah. That was an expectation as much as, when my parents were paying for piano lessons, I was supposed to practice.
Mm-hmm.
My parents' life did not revolve around me. I'm so grateful. That's the best gift they gave me.
Yeah. Yep.
And I was free to do my own thing. And I didn't get in trouble. I was practicing piano and not that I'd never gotten any trouble, but I was a responsible citizen, right? Like even in high school, I was kind of disgustingly responsible. I was like class president and head cheerleader and practiced piano 2 hours a day. It was a little bit like kind of disgusting. I was like, and I recognize that other personality types would not be that responsible, but that was the expectation. It's like, you give back to the world.
Right.
And the balance I had to find, because that also got me into that situation I was talking to at first, where it was like I was never the main event of my life. Okay, so I was responsible to make the world a better place, but I had so I knew that as a child, but as an adult, I had to find that balance, because sometimes I am right, sometimes I am at the top of the pyramid, sometimes it is my turn, but it's not always my turn.
Yeah. And let's hope more people start to realize that.
If not, I definitely think that is one of the reasons toxic relationships are on the rise, and there's such and toxic people are on the rise, because there's a kid, they're 12, you go into the school and parents say, well, it's not, my kid's not the problem, it's the kids he's hanging around with. Or it's like, well, but look, like your kid was the one who drew like, male genitalia on this little girl's math paper. Like your kid did that, or whatever it is, and it's like what middle schoolers do. And your kid was the one who was caught shoplifting. Your kid was the one who was doing this. Your kid was the one who's doing this. Well, wait, my kid's a good kid, it's the teacher's fault, it's the school's fault, it's the this fault, it's the that fault, and it's really, and that's what's so different even about my program. It is very much about personal responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
But it is not blaming yourself for other people being toxic.
Right. Take ownership.
Take ownership of what's actually yours.
Mm-hmm.
Not take ownership of what toxic people tell you is yours in that blame shift, right? Because they're like, everything is your fault. And it's
Right.
it's a very significant balance. And I call it being toxic person proof, right? And recognizing what's happening, because there's always that conversation about red flags, right? So it's like, oh, I need to see the red flags. It's like, come on now. If we had a group of 13-year-old girls and I said, if this person, you never know where they are, they're always something fishy, you feel like something fishy's going on, they talk bad about all their other friends, they talk bad about all their exes, they never show up when they say they're going to, are these red flags? Yes, those are red flags. A group of 13-year-old middle school girls could tell you those are red flags. But then when we're 33 or 43 or 53, well, they just had a bad childhood. They're just having a bad day. Well, it's probably my fault. Well, I shouldn't have said it this way.
Mm-hmm.
There is a huge gap, and it is ruining people's lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
How are they talking us into ignoring this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I actually ended up putting a post out there that I had to follow my own advice yesterday morning. My husband was laughing at me because I had 3 things in a row that I was like just scratching my head over. And that's the nicest way I can put it. But yeah, it's lack of the ownership of how someone else handles something. It's just, it's interesting. It's very interesting. So how would you, if you have—
I think it's a very nice way to say that.
that is my word. I've used that word for years.
Yeah. It's ruining people's lives.
Yeah.
It's absolutely ruining people's lives. It's ruining their ability to earn. It's ruining their ability to be present with their children. In that process, I mean, I do have a lot of grace. I hope it doesn't sound like I'm just like, I'm raising my hands, not pointing my finger. Right? Because there has absolutely been times in my life, and it was like, I'm so exhausted from putting up with bad behavior that it's just easier to give in to my kids. I'm tired.
Yeah. And I think that's how so many people feel, is they're just tired. So they don't want to deal with it. I mean, I feel like that's kind of what was going on, at the start of like this shift, is just people being tired. And it's just easier. You're right. It's the easier way out, is to eat the Nutella and watch Netflix versus eating carrots and getting on a treadmill, just like what you said. So.
And you're always going to be tired if you were solving problems that don't have solutions. So if someone's being a jerk to you and you think the problem to solve is that you need to be more loving and work harder in the relationship, of course you're tired.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's exhausting. It's out of energy. Mm-hmm.
So it creates this cycle. And I remember my teenager was having trouble with friends at school. And I used to run a mental health campaign for one of the largest, with a school within one of the largest school systems in the country. And she said, when I've got this trouble with this friend, and there was a counselor, and she said, well, you should take that friend coffee. If that girl's being mean to you and spreading rumors about you behind your back, why don't you bring her Starbucks in the morning so you can get on her good side? And I was like, no. That girl's behaving badly. So what we're teaching her is you need to work harder. You need to do more for her. You need to be better to her so she behaves better. So you don't think that girl's going to be exhausted as a parent at 45?
Right.
She thought she was doing the right thing. That counselor was not stupid. This girl is not stupid. We're just getting it wrong. And it's really hurting people. Mm-hmm. It is really hurting people.
So I know that so to wrap this up, because I love this, where we're at right now with this, what would you advise someone to do with this?
Which piece?
I know. I'm like, okay, this is probably like a whole other podcast. But because I do believe it's just a real struggle. It's a real struggle out there. And it affects, this podcast is about personal development, sales, and leadership. And this nails all of them, right? Because sales is your business. So if you're a working mom, you're dealing with this in so many ways and shapes and forms. And I know we're talking about children, but it could be your children, it could be coworkers, it could be anything. It's obviously personal development and realizing how to take care of yourself and your mind and your energy. Mm-hmm. And, it's leadership because, understanding boundaries, understanding toxic people is a piece of leadership. You might have someone toxic on your team, or your team's your family. It's just so many ways to look at it. So
I love the conversation around leadership, and I call it wisdom, but leadership is lovely, right? We think we're being like good and nice when it's just like, well, I just need to give them the benefit of the doubt. Well, I just need to believe the best in people. Mm-hmm. And it's like, how about believing the truth in people?
Yes.
And if someone's pattern, everybody has bad days. Everybody does things they shouldn't, okay? But if there's a constant pattern of blame, a pattern of responsibility avoidance, mm-hmm. a pattern of image management, a pattern of unreliability, a pattern of whatever it is, don't ignore the data.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So right on. And we talked about this in my podcast with you, is, even when you have to get like another person's opinion, is it me? Am I crazy? Or is it
always a pattern?
Yeah, it's just, and this would happen to me yesterday. I have a pattern. This girl has a pattern, I should say, that I'm noticing, and there's no accountability. It's like really? It's not just a bad day. Like, no, it is truly a pattern. So yeah, it's tough.
And the less toxic people you have in your life, the better your life will be.
Oh, for sure.
That is very consistent, right? Mm-hmm. So we get in that idea, like with that girl, and it's like, there's no justice, and it's not fair. I wanted to be so clear that toxic people getting away with things are not fair. But we also kind of get in our head like, well, somebody needs to teach her a lesson.
Right.
And like leadership, you are not going to change them. That is the one consistent every expert says. You will not change them.
It's so true.
Better boundaries may protect you. It will not change them.
Right. Absolutely true.
Better, more love, more forgiveness, more kindness, more whatever, even training. I mean, I had more therapists in my program than anyone else. There's a real assumption that every therapist is a toxic relationship expert. It is so far from the truth. And, they're there to like, they're general practitioners, right? They solve a lot of problems, but the expectation, it's like, oh, they're experts in toxic person communication. Some are, mm-hmm. but the expectation that they all are is also not true. We're just very early in this conversation, and I'm excited to see where it goes over my lifetime, and believe what is happening, not what you wish was happening.
So true. Yep.
And recognize the real there is a financial and emotional cost to toxic people being in your life.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Well, thank you. I hope this helps some people out there. I always want people to realize that they are not alone. If you are dealing with someone that is toxic, you're not alone. And I hope this podcast helps.
And there are strategies, not only are you not alone, I don't mean to say there's nothing you can do about it. There's so much you can do about your life. There's so much you can do to have an amazing life. There's so much you can do to feel safe. There's so much you can do, right?
Right.
But butting your head against a toxic person over and over and over again, or just kind of hunkering down and hope it goes away, are not strategies that I have ever seen to be successful. Well, Melinda, they're going to have to come on the Toxic Person Proof podcast and hear your, it was about what, when people push your buttons, what that is like. So people will definitely check out Melinda on the Toxic Person Proof podcast, and check out my Facebook group, Finding Love and Success After a Toxic Relationship. And you can find out more about working with me or what I do within that group, as well as on my website at sarahkramsey.com.
Awesome. I so appreciate you taking time, Sarah, and I look forward to connecting with you further. So thank you for sharing. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you.